Imagine the multitude that will be caught up. And imagine those who are not in Christ, those who remain in the world, those who have made a decision not to follow Jesus. They'll have the press going, where are all these millions missing? Where have they all gone? What is Christ returned and all these people disappeared? Who is this guy? I wonder what the thinking will be on the earth in those days. Because there will be those remaining, many, at that time. While we are caught up in Revelation 15:2 to a place called the Sea of Glass, sitting in that cloud. And we're invited to a very special ceremony. And that ceremony is called the Marriage Supper. The Marriage Supper. And who is Jesus going to marry? Jesus is going to marry a very special woman. A woman who comes as a city. The saints there to adorn her as fine linen, to dress her and make her beautiful. The righteousness of the saints, that righteousness that Jesus gives us, will be her adornment. And she will have around her head a crown of 12 stars, showing the very thinking and government of God's church. Because God does not give His church to be led by one man. Jesus called 12 to be apostles, and then He called 7. Just as Moses did the same thing when his father Jethro said, this is too much of a burden for you. This is not right. So Moses called 12 and made them princes over the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes. And Moses set up the 70, the Sanhedrin, in Israel. And that was the foreshadow and the pattern for Jesus' government, for Jesus' ministry. Jesus set up 12 and 70. Why didn't Jesus make a president or a pope to rule over His church? Because Jesus is still alive. Because Jesus is the head of the church. And if Jesus is the head and is alive, then He must be ruling with all power and authority over His own body. He doesn't need somebody to sit in His throne. For whomever would sit in the very throne of Christ must be Antichrist. And therefore, we see in the world today churches where there are popes, great single men leading these places, but in them we don't find the spirit of truth. We find the spirit of error. We don't find them being biblical. We find them being something else. And so this very body described in Revelation chapter 12, this woman who has been God's people all through from Abraham down to these ages today, is persecuted by the dragon, persecuted by Satan himself, the one who would devour the man-child who would come from this woman, the people of God. And Jesus has a plan to call us to that marriage supper in that great city, on the sea of glass, in the clouds, in the air, while the angels pour out the wrath of God upon those remaining on the earth, the cup of Babylon that has gone out to confuse the world. While that's been poured out on the earth, Jesus is there with His saints, and only with our eyes shall we behold this iniquity that falls upon the earth. And the nations of the earth become so angry that they all rally to make war. And they join in a place described in the Bible as Armageddon, which is found in Revelation 16 and verse 16. Armageddon, or Har-Megiddo, is a valley that is sort of Israel-Syria area. Many great wars have been fought there, including the war with Napoleon, and many have been defeated in the valley of Megiddo. And in the last days, the last great war on this earth will befell Armageddon. And so all the nations, the 200,000, or 200 million kings of the east, will come over a dried up Euphrates River to invade and make war against Jacob, or God's apple, Israel. We know that 10 kings will give their power for an hour to the beast, and he will make war. We know that Russia will come with, as Gog and Magog, and with all Ethiopia and Kut and Push and all their company against Israel. We see all nations of the earth gathered together to make war against Israel. Now the saints have already been caught up to the sea of glass because they have accepted Jesus. But Israel remains in the flesh on this earth in a time of Jacob's trouble.